Are you one of the many busy professionals working in offices day in and day out? Do you wonder how some people grow their wealth fast, retire early, and play on workdays? Well, you're in luck, because Ginny Bolling hosts this show, Pivot to Prosperity, where she interviews people that can do just that. Play on workdays. Many guests have become financially free. She also interviews people that are on their journey and people that are in support roles, like attorneys, contractors, brokers, and others. Commercial real estate is the common element. She is on a mission to be sure busy professionals know they can own substantial commercial properties too, like apartments, self-storage facilities, and others, and not have to do the work managing them. Passive investing is the key. Syndications are the typical method. Tax write-offs are some of the biggest rewards. Ginny and partners find the deals, build a strong team and business plan, then offer the investment opportunities to passive investors. New episodes are released every Tuesday at 12, so watch for new releases. If you want to get involved, let us know. You need to get pre-qualified to hear about most deals. See the show notes for contact information.
Hello. Ginny Bolling here with Pivot to Prosperity, brought to you by Pivotal Real Estate Investments, where we help investors build wealth and income through commercial real estate that also improves communities. And today we have with us Kent Leach. Kent, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Jenny.
We are together in an investment group, and we've been in a couple different groups, at least two. I don't know if you're in some of the others. We didn't talk about that just now. We get a little review going before we come on the air, but yeah, I've really enjoyed being able to talk with you, and I would actually hand it over to you right here, actually, to talk about that. That's a perfect to launch with, because that's a unique group, and we don't mind sharing that at all with people, right?
Right, exactly. Well, we're in a group that vets deals together, and I don't think you could ever, um, it's so hard to find people to vet deals with, but we've found a great group where fund managers come together and we can do it, share a lot of the hard, heavy lifting and help each other look at these deals. And we see a lot of great deal flow, which is one thing most investors don't see. And then we're pretty quick to figure out which ones fit and which ones don't. And when we find one we like, we can all pitch in and help vet that deal together. So yeah, that's a great place to where that's actually where we met, I think.
Well, were you with Raise Masters too?
Oh, yep. I was in
Yeah.
Raise Masters.
Yeah. And anyway, but so going back to this other investment group, people may not realize there's like 8 or 10 different sections. You've got, besides obviously the underwriting and market analysis that everything gets, there's the legal side and vetting the sponsors, and we get to the point of interviewing people that have been doing business with them. And there's like 7 or 8, maybe 10 areas, right?
Yeah, at least. Now I like to break it down and make it real simple at the beginning. I call it my smart framework. And S for me, the most important thing in any deal is the sponsor. And you can spend a few minutes there and find out if you want to go further, right? If you find out they've only been doing this for a couple years and have never gone full circle, that usually will help me roll out the sponsor real quick. But smart is sponsor, market, the asset itself, risk and returns, and then timing and taxes. Sometimes it's just not a great time to invest in an asset. I think we've seen that in multifamily. But another thing is the taxes. You really have to look at the tax implication of every deal you do.
So absolutely. And is that pretty much in the order that you go through
I
the
think so. I mean, it just works out for the sponsor to be first, right?
yeah.
I know you do a lot. You love looking at markets. You usually jump in and do market analysis on most deals. And I don't know if and it's not that markets, they are important and there's no doubt, but I love some of these secondary and tertiary markets. I know people chase after these big markets like Dallas and Atlanta, but I really like some of these other smaller markets. Once you get that far, you got to look at the asset. If you're looking at a 40-year-old building, you got to be careful. I flipped houses. That's how I got started. And sometimes you get in some situations where the electric is not good. They've got the wrong kind of breaker box. You learn these things, right? This certain type of PVC material that just disintegrates and your plumbing goes to nothing. So I've seen multifamily with that stuff. It just crumbles, the wrong type of plumbing. So The asset itself, and really something that people just don't understand is risk. I think for the longest time we've seen multifamily do so well, but that's an equity investment. And you even heard some operators say, "Hey, this is really safe." And no matter how safe or how well a market's doing, equity is equity. And most of us who were around in 2008 saw equity vanish like vapor. So equity is not necessarily safe. You need something with a little bit more tangible to it. So that's why I think a lot of investors are kind of pivoting to private debt, and not just pref equity, but private debt on house flippers or hard money loans. There's all kinds of things you can loan your money and make 10, 12, even higher returns with private debt, and you have collateral that you can confiscate if you need to go get your money back.
Right. Yeah. There's so many different ways to get into real estate. But the biggest thing, which I think you were looking at as a takeaway, why don't you tell us what your takeaway is?
Well, my takeaway would be that almost everyone needs to figure out a way to get at least half of their investable assets off of Wall Street and onto Main Street. Now, what do I mean by that? Main Street is things we drive by every day. You know, on the way to most people's jobs, you're driving by apartment buildings, self-storage facilities, maybe a mobile home park or some vacant land that's being developed. So those are Main Street assets. So I think we fall into this rut where we think stocks and bonds are it, mutual funds. Even some of the talking heads tell you to just put money in these things and leave it alone. And the truth is, those don't quite translate well to retirement either. You put a lot of money into the stock market, you get to a retirement age where you kind of need a certain amount of cash flow. And you got things like the 4% rule that just really don't apply that well today. Whereas if you've got an asset that's paying you 12% every month, that's cash flow that you can actually live on.
Absolutely. And the thing to me, it's just absolutely sinful that real estate is considered an alternative investment. It should be the primary,
Mhm.
the most important, because without Mother Earth, buildings and land, we wouldn't be here.
That's true. Now, you know,
So,
that's probably the illiquidity of real estate that gets most people. But like I say, there are ways to invest in real estate without actually being in it, like a note that is collateralized by real estate that will actually produce cash flow.
right. And then there's all these alternative investments. As each asset type goes through its cycle, something else is coming up when the other is going down, right?
Yeah, you can invest in almost anything. And we were talking about the book from Tony Robbins called The Holy Grail of Investing. And in that book, he talks about Ray Dalio as being the inspiration of the Holy Grail. Ray Dalio says that everyone needs 10 to 12 uncorrelated assets. Now, that means totally uncorrelated to Wall Street. So those assets are things like we just mentioned. Self-storage has been really great during downturns and upturns. So uncorrelated means when the market's falling, these assets can rise, or just they can do whatever they're going to do with no tie to Wall Street at all. And I think that's a really good thing to invest by, a good philosophy to have.
Right. And so when you're talking about that many different things, there's various, many different kinds of real estate, and there's the stock market. As far as other things that people could be investing in, why don't you name a few?
Oh, wow. So, like, you know, right now, private credit is really a big thing. But if you read that book, they talk about motion pictures. You can actually get good tax. You know, it's hard to find, but you can get great tax benefits. Oil and gas. You know, I wouldn't tell anybody to go into oil and gas without somebody holding your hand, a really trusted person to go into oil and gas with you. But oil and gas is one. What are some private businesses? You know, we invested in a group that's actually rolling up some paving companies, and they're trying to buy four, five, six paving companies from mom and pops who want to they want to graduate, they want to retire, and they can't find anybody to buy their business. So these businesses are being bought at 3 and 4 times the earnings, which is almost like buying an apartment building at a 20 or 30 cap. So there are a lot of ways, and especially when the market's telling you that real estate might be a little tired right now. There are things you can invest in, but maybe it's time to look at private equity and some different parts of the market.
I'm still pretty bullish on some parts of real estate too, but yeah, the other thing that you know very much about is, and I don't know if you'd consider it investment because it's kind of a tool, I guess, is the infinite banking concept, right?
Hmm.
Insurance.
Absolutely. I was exposed to the infinite banking concept probably 13 years ago. And when I first saw it, I knew there was something to it, but I just couldn't quite uh, get a good grasp of it. I went ahead and started a policy. I actually liquidated, that was the first time I liquidated a 401k to do that because I
Wow.
was that much a believer in it. And so it took a while. I listened to a talking head who will he answers the phones and tells people that they're crazy to invest in whole life, but these are specially designed whole life policies. They have to be done a certain way, and you just don't walk into any insurance agent's office and get these policies. So I love these things. It's like a forced savings account. It's also helping me to think generations ahead. The infinite banking concept is going to change my family tree for generations, and it feels good to be able to do that. You have to teach your kids about it. It's not being taught in schools, and if you probably took a poll right now, half the people think it's some kind of scam. More than likely they're hearing this from insurance providers, which is crazy. They don't understand their own product. Even some of the companies that push insurance don't understand what they have. And this is what we had before the 401k. A lot of wealthy people used not infinite banking, but whole life policies to store their wealth. It's a great place to keep money. It's not an investment, it's just a place to keep money, better than a checking account, better than CDs. And in the long run, the benefits are unbelievable.
And to that end, we had Madvi on as a guest speaker, who's also in our group, and great things can happen. Like Disney got started. That's how he got his money to start Disney. And
Yeah.
Tupperware is local to us. That's how they got their money. And McDonald's, right?
Hmm.
Right, crap. That's
Once you understand infinite banking and whole life and how flexible they are, you'll start to question why you would invest from anywhere else. So that's kind of something that would have to dive in. But where you invest from, maybe it's an IRA, a self-directed IRA, a 401k, where you're investing from has huge implications. And I just have chosen to invest not solely from my whole life, but if I need 50,000 for a syndication to go into, quite often I'll go to my whole life policy to get it. And then it takes about 2 to 3 days for that money to hit my checking account, and then I can wire it into the investment.
and you're borrowing against your cash value, right?
Of course, yeah. You never touch the actual compounding, and that's one of the great things about infinite banking. When I saw that, you'll hear so many people, even Dave Ramsey himself, that talking head, will talk about compounding interest. The problem is we break that compounding. It's so easy, and there's so many things we'll do. We say we're gonna do something a certain way and save some money, but we end up buying another boat or something with it. So. Um, Infinite banking is really a forced savings account. When I get that that bill in the mail that says it's time to pay my premium, um, I pay that premium. I never miss a bill. Most people never miss a bill. Well, when I'm paying that premium, it feels like, so to some people may say, when can I stop paying this premium? I don't ever want to stop paying insurance premium, because if you saw what happened to that premium once I put it in, what it creates on the other side, I hope I don't ever have to stop paying premium.
Yep, that's a shocker to hear.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so how many policies do you have?
Oh boy, we just added a couple big ones. I think we're up to about 11. I have
Oh, wow.
three on each, one on each of my children. I have three children, and between me and my wife, we have another at least eight. So that's the whole thing about infinite banking. It's not one policy. If you own a whole life insurance policy, you're not infinite banking until you start borrowing and paying it back, and borrowing and paying it back. So this is money that never leaves our system, never leaves our pool of money. It's like having a swimming pool of money that we go get money and then we make sure we put it back. So if I do a syndication, then I go ahead and put all of that syndication returns back into the policy to pay that policy loan back. And a lot of people get hung up on the interest rates and things like that. It's not about interest. It's about reclaiming that volume of interest and reclaiming the role of a banker in your life.
Because you're the banker.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so there's so many other things you've done. We don't want to lose track of time. Adaptive reuse. You did a furniture warehouse, I believe, right?
I did. When the multifamily market was getting crazy back in 2019, I decided to go see if I could break into LIHTC, which stands for Low Income Housing Tax Credits. And that's a government program. There's two types of affordable housing. I think you could say there's naturally affordable housing, which might be mobile home parks, RV parks, and then there's government sponsored affordable housing. So LIHTC is a bipartisan effort that came into Congress probably about back in the 80s. And it gets bipartisan support. It's one of the few things they agree on. But LIHTC creates tax credits for developing affordable housing. Now, here in the state of Tennessee, where I live, we found a little bit of a loophole where we knew that if we could get this building, it was an 85-year-old furniture store in terrible disrepair. We got that under contract and went and applied for credits, and we knew that the state was incentivizing historic buildings, and we actually won some very competitive 9% tax credits. And once you have those credits in hand, it's pretty easy to attract what we call a syndicator. Now, that's not the same syndicator we talk about most of the time, but these syndicators are C Corps that need those tax credits, and they'll come in, they'll raise money from their investors, and some of those are business owners who need those tax breaks, and they'll buy those credits from developers like me, typically for around 85 cents on the dollar. So there's a spread in there for them to make a profit and then pass those credits on to their investors. Now, we use those credits to fund the rehab of this building. It's just unfortunately in 2020, when I won those credits, little did I know that weeks later we were going to go through COVID, and all the numbers that I had decided I needed, the $5 million renovation I was going to do turned almost into 10. And so it took a few years for all these uh, tax credit agencies in the state of Tennessee to get things figured out. But I was able to go back and get more tax credits and get that deal finished. And we're actually in our first year of operations with 100% occupancy and trying to get into our permanent loan and financing right now.
Well, and we'll link if you want to in the show notes to your video on that, because that was a fun video to see you with. And I love adaptive reuse. So yeah,
Yeah, there was
you did it.
a lot of emotions coming to a head that day when we finally cut the ribbon. And that's what that video was about.
Very cool. So then you also, well, that ties into the LIHTC I was going to have us talk about. So, and I didn't get to, that's what I was going to tell you. This week, I'm going to the Florida Redevelopment Association meeting at the League of Cities does here in Florida. So it's all CRAs. So Community Redevelopment Agency
Yeah,
people, and they sit in all these meetings and talk and groan about they can't get investors to help them do their projects.
wow.
So I try to get to them and say, hey, why don't you try reaching out to the investors? Call me, you know, because
Yeah,
sometimes there's like in one particular city I know of, but it was too far from me and the metrics weren't quite right. But they had 3 out of 4 corners on Main Street that they controlled that had empty buildings.
wow.
And if the right people came in and attracted the right businesses, you could tie up some of these buildings for 99 years with very low rent, like
Yeah,
$1 a year for 5 years even, you know?
yeah.
So,
There's some really nice programs out there, and unfortunately, some of them don't serve us the way that we hope they would. I've heard horror stories of buildings being on the national list and the hurdles that that creates. And it created some hurdles for my building too. But when you're on the national list, there's a certain way you have to do things. And I've heard of buildings literally crumbling to the ground while they were, developers wanting to buy these buildings, but once they realized they would have to go back with the same type of roof. And unfortunately, that roof was going to cost 10 times more than a regular shingle roof. And even in the state of Tennessee, we lost a historic structure because we couldn't get past that red tape with the National Preservation. Actually, the National Park Service runs that program. It's odd, but so
Yeah, there's always that uphill battle with people that don't know and don't care to know the
yeah,
details.
yeah.
And that's yeah, always a struggle for sure. But did you also get into some brownfields credits with that one building? You familiar
No,
with
we
them?
just had we had the LIHTC credits and we had some historic tax credits. So
Okay.
between those two tax credits, it provided over 80% of the equity. So LIHTC deals are kind of backwards. They're 80% equity, 20% debt. So, but you spend a lot of money, and they're restricted. The rents are restricted at the end of the day. But it's a long conversation to talk about the difference. LIHTC is really a great way to develop. A lot of people get it mixed up with the Section 8 program. It's not like that. You have to fit in a certain category between 30% and 60% of that average median income. And so LIHTC serves a slice. And one of the biggest probably drawbacks or criticisms of the LIHTC program is it doesn't really help what we would consider the ultra poor under 30%. That's usually where Section 8 comes in.
Gotcha. Okay. I haven't done Section 8. Back when I was an appraiser, I used to appraise for some people that loved it, but I never have done a Section 8 program as yet myself. But so as you know, as we get towards the end here, I always ask my guests if there's a pivotal person or event that has brought you to where you are today or is pushing you towards some particular goal. Is there?
A pivotal person, I was gonna go with the old standard, but I think since we've talked about somebody, I was gonna go with Robert Kiyosaki because those books were influential to me. It really wasn't Rich Dad Poor Dad for me. It was Cashflow Quadrant, his second book. But I'm gonna tell you probably the most influential person in my life, and I'm gonna say this, is Nelson Nash. He was the inventor of the infinite banking concept we were talking about. And so Nelson was a great Christian man who wanted to impact lives and help people get their money away from banks and not have to use banks. And if you practice infinite banking long enough, you can achieve that. You can achieve that for your family where your children will never have to go to a bank for anything, believe it or not, even houses. So as I sat here thinking about that, Nelson Nash would be probably the person I would give the credit to for changing that in my life.
He's not alive anymore, is he?
He's not. He passed away before COVID, but one claim to fame, his son lives here in Knoxville, Tennessee. He was from living in Birmingham, Alabama. So, yeah, Nelson's son is a doctor here in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Is he carrying the torch too or no?
I think he still practices. I think he practices both medicine and infinite banking, but it's his Nelson's son-in-law is the one that kind of picked up the torch on infinite banking and is carrying that forward.
All right. Well, good to know. Good to know. Well, very good. And then going back to the takeaway, I want to give you a chance to touch on that one more time before we end this and you give your contact information.
Yeah, sure. My biggest takeaway is folks, get some of your money, if not all of your money, off of Wall Street onto Main Street. And what we mean by that is get it into real tangible assets. These are assets that you can touch and feel. You can call the sponsor. You can actually reach out and find out if something's not going the way you thought. You call the sponsor and find out, hey, why didn't we get a distribution? Try that on Wall Street. You're just not going to get it. We've been conditioned to put all of our money in 401ks and in other investments, mutual funds, and things that are tied to Wall Street. And one tweet, one economic downturn, one missile launched at Iran or whatever can cause those assets to sink. So get those things into uncorrelated assets like real estate, self-storage, mobile home parks, things that aren't tied to Wall Street. And you'll be a whole lot happier as you approach retirement because you'll be able to actually get some cash flow out of those investments.
Very true. Very. I totally agree. And you don't have your sign behind you. Tell us what the name of your company is and how people can reach you.
Well, I run Hickory Creek Capital Partners, but the best way to find out about me is go to kentleach.com. Now I need to do some things with that, but it's Kent, Kent Leach with an A, Leach.com. That'll direct you to my Smart Flex Fund, which is where we invest in alternative assets and people invest alongside me. I'm an LP just like most of my investors. I'm just looking for a good place to put my money as well. My investors like to invest alongside me, and we do that there. So that's the Smart Flex Fund. You can find out how to get involved with that. And I love just getting on the phone with investors or people that want to talk about infinite banking, finance. I'm passionate about helping people break free of some of the things that are out there that keep them somewhat locked up and unable to get their money into better investments. So love it. Just book a call with me anytime.
And there's, of course, the array of assets that we've been reviewing together that you may or may not have available, but there's a good diversity
Just
assortment
about
there.
almost always have something. The private credit deals can stay open for a year or longer, so there's almost something always in there to put your money into. But I take pride in helping people look at where they're at and let's find things that fit you. Don't just invest in it because I am. Let's make sure that it fits where you are in your life. Are you approaching retirement? Maybe you just don't like to take risks. So it's not a one size fits all. You have to jump on the phone with somebody, and hopefully, somebody like me will help lead you through these investments. And if nothing fits, you don't invest.
Right. Amen. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Kent. I'm glad we were able to get this on the recording now.
Yep.
And your show notes will all be, with the contact information. And so we'll let you know when it's ready to air.
All righty. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you.